Welcome, John.
Ait Squachel CM. Asa John Harris, the name of Tonoth. My name is John Harris. I'm a member of Sinanimo First Nation, that's Nanaimo. My ancestry is Coast Salish and Dene on my father's side from Sinanimo, Musqueam, and Cold Lake, Alberta, Treaty 8 territory. And on my mother's side, I'm German, Irish, English, and Sinanimo. I open introducing myself in this way because it's good protocol. You acknowledge your relations and your place. When I'm out in community, oftentimes people will ask me who my grandma is because our community is matriarchal, and so our lineage passes through the mothers and the grandmothers. I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and I want to start us off in a really good way. And I always know how to do that with the words of our elders. So I will get into full screen mode. Sorry. There we go. So I just want to preface this video a little bit. This is Butch Dick. He's one of the elders in our Elders Advisory Council for the Greater Victoria School District. He's one of the knowledge keepers who's worked in this community for many years in education. And he did a video recently called Lekwungen, a place to smoke herring. And this video is done through Songhees, and it's one of our local nations. And it basically gives you a bird's eye view of the territory, one that you wouldn't normally see if you were just driving around or walking through the territory. And they speak to some of the local stories and the history of the land here. And I just want to acknowledge that the words of our previous speakers, and that while we talked about place-based learning and land-based learning, place-based and place-conscious learning, I'm going to be speaking more specifically to land-based learning, and acknowledging that we are on the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that I was born and raised here in this territory, and would like to express gratitude for being a guest here in this territory for most of my life, and raising my kids here, and the many relationships to family and friends and mentors from this community that I've grown up with. Having worked at Esquimalt Nation for almost 10 years now, and working with their youth there, and they call me an honorary Esquimalt Nation member, which is very endearing. So I take that with great pride. But the inspiration for this video came out of the place to smoke herring. And at one point, Butch says the most important thing you can do is learn everything you can about Lekwungen people, because this is their land. And I think if you spoke to an elder in any territory, respective to where you live, they would probably say something similar. So I'm just going to get right into the video here, and give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound.
Asiam Nishelicha, Asiam Dushwalqua, Haishqua Quanzana, Techa Lakongantanuk, Haishka Siam Naquilia. That's a typical welcome of Lakongan people. And when we welcome people to our traditional territory, it's a land of smoked herring. And our ancestors, lived, hunted, and harvested this land since time immemorial. And this reserve here is actually the second, reserve of our people. It used to be right down in the inner harbor of Victoria at one time. I think land-based learning it's a school term, but land-based learning is actually part of our lifestyle. It's a part of our values as people. And at one time, it was extremely important for us to learn, the ways of our ancestors and how to hunt and fish and harvest the land. And I think it's important for young people to have some kind of foundation, even if it's the values and the of the learning of the ways, of our ancestors and how it differs today, and compared with what they have now. I think it's important life skill, and that's it was just taken for granted when I was growing up. That we went hunting ducks and we went fishing and we experienced all of that, and not as a part of school type of thing, but just a way of life. That's what we did. Well, I guess when I started off, I used a typical welcome of Lekwungen people, and and we were welcoming people. We there's diversity not only in First Nation people, but in people in general in the Victoria area. And a lot of people don't really appreciate the fact that this territory was Lekwungen territory, or understand what Lekwungen means, because we were known as Songhees before, which is a anglicized term for one of our words. Well, in our culture, when we were being taught by an elder from Saanich, it was important to acknowledge that the language attached to the teachings and the teaching is attached to the land. And you have to learn all those three and how they're attached. And of course, language in our longhouses is the only thing used. And and we learn to understand the language of the big house and I guess what ceremony's been carried out and what's going to be done in the big house. I think they have to, express the respect for the land and everything around you and how to appreciate not only the biosystems but the the ecology and the environment. There has to be appreciation of that. And in today's world, it's really hard to express that because the young people are brought up differently than we were. We had a great appreciation for land and what was provided around us naturally, and that's not really part of young people's learning this day.
So I just wanted to make a special note that while we did go and interview Butch to do some land-based learning work and filming, we also went to Marianne Thomas, who's an elder for Esquimalt Nation, and asked her similar questions. And their responses were very different. Butch has worked in education for many years and understands kind of a more linear question and response process, whereas Marianne is much more speaks like an elder in more cyclical terms. And so while Butch's interview was about 5 minutes, Marianne's was about an hour. So that would have eaten up the whole session here. So we're hoping to have that as a resource on our website once we have a chance to edit that a little bit. So I just want to talk a little bit about local education agreements. Local education agreements are agreements with your local nations, and most school districts in the province will have one of these. This is an example of one with Songhees Nation in our territory, and we're currently working on our LEA with Esquimalt Nation. And essentially, it's an agreement between school districts and the local nations upon whose territory or territories the school district resides to provide educational services to the community in the absence of a tribal school. Essentially, the nation is purchasing education services from the school district, and the LEA is the contract. The Greater Victoria School District has two local nations, Songhees and Esquimalt. Some other school districts in the province have many more. Like Clately has, I think, 16. So, depending on where you are, you'll have an LEA or one or two or several. But I bring this up because we actually have a contractual obligation to provide meaningful land-based learning opportunities to the students of our school districts. You can see here that the parties agreed to implement the BC curriculum as revised to integrate First Peoples principles of learning, authentic Indigenous resources, diverse learning experiences, including land-based education and traditional ecological knowledge. So I would encourage you to just go and seek out your local LEA and familiarize yourself with that. There might be some really important information in there that you can learn and glean from that. So this is Earl Claxton Jr., and he's another one of the members of our Elders Advisory Council. He's a Wasanic elder from Sachem. And in preparation for this presentation, I consulted with the Advisory Council last week, and I presented the video that Butch had done and talked about this presentation as well as another one I did last week. And Earl reached out to me afterwards and shared some really good words. And I asked for permission to share his words, and he said he would be delighted. So that was great. And what Earl said is that he thinks that land-based learning is very important for First Nations. We've been here on this land for a very long time. We have a lot of untapped knowledge. It is only in recent times that we are starting to be asked about it. And he also shared that his dad, Dr. Earl Claxton Sr., had said, "We know where our territory is because we have a name for it, and it's a special meaning and has a story attached to it that explains why it's called that." So land-based learning involves understanding the history of the place you're in, understanding your relationship to that place, and how the land and waters were used and continue to be used by its Indigenous peoples. For example, Earl shared a story with me about Sneedquith, or Todd Inlet, meaning the place of blue grouse. Earl says it was the first village site of the Saanich. Blue grouse like to roost in the branches of these trees, and there was so much blue grouse there that they filled all the branches of all the trees down to the lowest branches. It's very powerful to speak at these places. So they wanted examples, so I brought examples. I've been doing land-based learning for the last several years, and like Butch said in his video, for me, it was just a way of life. That's how I was brought up. And I also identified with what he said at the very last statement, is that it's not a part of a young people's learning to this day. And I saw that, going into my role as an educator, and wanted to kind of change that, provide some opportunities for young people to do some learning on the land, like I was so privileged to have as a child growing up with my father in this territory, taking me out fishing and hunting and clam digging and oystering around the region. So I just wanted to share with you some examples of those experiences that I've had over the years. So our first one here is just at Ogden Point off the breakwater, where we were going to catch lingcod, and we caught several, and I showed them how to fillet them and cook them up as fish and chips, and that was a really good day. And this picture here is of a student who caught his very first trout over at Goldstream. And part of the teachings that he had received is that you always gift your first catch. And so he actually gifted that fish to me, which was a very nice gift. And my kids really enjoyed eating that fish later on that day. So we have some more examples here of fishing off the breakwater, and of shucking oysters and teaching them how to process those. Here's a picture of a bunch of clams and oysters, and one of a crab as well when we were at Esquimalt Lagoon, going and harvesting crab in the water there. The First Nations people of this region are known as saltwater people because of their relationship to and interconnectedness with the Salish Sea. Fishing in various locations around the region, including lakes, rivers, and oceans, involving a variety of methods: rod and reel, netting, gaffing, and spearing for salmon, cod, trout, bass, gathering clams, crabs, oysters, and mussels. Those are all things that I grew up doing, and so I always jump at opportunities to be able to share these teachings with our students in the Greater Victoria School District. The land. So learning about Megan before it was Beacon Hill and how it changed over time as a result of colonization. And that's his first picture here. And this is Beacon Hill Park. We talk about the burial cairns and the fortification site, the Garry Oak ecosystem, and the 7 signs of Lekwungen. This is a group of students I took out a few years ago. And we talked about all of these things, and how colonization has impacted, this delicate ecosystem over time, talking about the stewardship of the land. We talk about traditional land uses. What were the traditional land uses in this territory, including food systems like Quetlal or Camas, the clam beds on Tlaches, which is Songhees Islands or One Island. We talk about pit cooks or salmon roasts, traditional forms of cooking food. We talk about Quetlal here, the Camas ecosystem. And then finally, we talk about stewardship or giving back. And this was a day we went down to Maple Banks down at Songhees Nation, and we did a beach cleanup. Lots of things get washed up onto the banks of the Maple Banks there, and washed up from the ocean. And so we decided to take a day and go down and just clean up the beach side as an act of reciprocity and stewardship. I look at ecocultural restoration or ecological restoration and cultural restoration. A teaching that was passed on to me from one of my elders is that when we heal the land, we heal ourselves and our relationships. And I love this quote here that comes from, I don't have the author of it right now, but Indigenous stories, identity, and worldviews are all tied to the land. So our relationship with it means taking our responsibility of stewardship seriously. And so I just wanted to provide some examples of stewardship or restoration. So the first one down here on the left is a picture of some restoration work that was happening in Plumper Bay, which is just out front of Esquimalt Nation. And this was a big diesel spill that happened outside of their territory, within their territory. And the remediation work was happening for about 6 months, and then everything just kind of stopped, and the land was never fully remediated. And there's still signs up saying, don't use the water, don't launch in the bay. And historically, this place was used to launch canoes and do crabbing and harvest shellfish. And I was working in the community at the time, and I really saw the impact it had on the community. The community really grieved the loss of this bay. It's a spiritual place. It's a special place for the community. And so I've been hoping to, we're looking at partnering our school district and Esquimalt Nation and UVic and the CRD to explore further remediation efforts and explore potential for a youth environmental stewardship initiative to go out on the land and educate people using the land, as well as do land monitoring and things of that nature, to just weave in and include the next generation into this land stewardship. On the right is a picture of Sneedquith, which I shared a story about earlier, and the restoration work there. And I just wanted to click on the link and go to the website here, because there's some really amazing work that's being done and has been done. And it's all been done in partnership with the local nation and with schools. So this is ways that schools and classes can actually get involved in restoration work. And there may be examples from around your region, but this is one from out in Saanich. And these are examples of land remediation, or some people call it decolonizing the land, taking out, eradicating invasive species. And here's some before and after pictures of what the land looks like. You can see here the Himalayan blackberry was just overtaking everything, and they remediated that entire site. Here's another picture of a similar situation and the before and after. Here's one more. And again. And I'm sure if you go to your local nation's websites that you'll find examples of this kind of work being done. Um, some people call it an act of reconciliation. I really like that. You know, it's something, you know, physical that you can go and do to support the local community and do some land healing work. And it's powerful and it's transformative. So if you have an opportunity to be a part of an initiative like this, I highly encourage it. So I know I'm running short on time. I just wanted to get to my next slide, which is where do we start from here? So I think it's so important to learn about the territory that you're in. Start by researching the places close to your school or areas of interest. Many resources can be found online, including local nation websites, your IED website if you have one, and library, FNESC's website, obviously. And here's just a list that you'll have hopefully have access to once this is archived, that of resources, places that I go to get access to land-based learning. Why do we do it? This is a great one for one of the local nations about their Luelnu Tribal School. This is Peikinout, where they do a lot of land-based learning. The Signs of Lekwungen. This is a really great resource just for educators on why we do land-based learning. I would love to have some more time to get into, you know, the mental health benefits of that, and you know how it impacts our future generations in terms of their connectedness to the land and environmental stewardship and sustainability. But that'll be the next session. So Haichka CM, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you learned a little bit.
Thank you, John. I feel like we're going to have a part 2, everybody. Yes, you heard that here first. John Harris is committed to part 2. Thank you to John. Thank you to Mia and Mercedes. And thank you to Oren for sharing their work and their insights. The time that you folk put into thinking about what to share and what might be important under the time constraints. I've been living it for the whole series. There's nothing like knowing that Tammy Renyard's going to cut you off for the benefit of the larger group. In the chat box, everyone, we invite you to share one important thing from today, something that resonated with you, something that's a next step. It's up to you, but we call this the waterfall activity. Don't press return yet. Just type something into the chat box and we'll press return at the same time. So just type something in, something that stood out, something that was a big idea. Maybe it's a next step, but don't press return yet. We'll all do that at the same time. What can you pop into the chat box about something significant for you today? Thank you, folks. I'd like to close with some knowledge I received from a Sinaiaks knowledge keeper. I work in the West Kootenays, where the Sinaiaks people were declared extinct by the federal government in 1956. And the Sinaiaks are working to receive acknowledgement again. They were forced to cross the border to the United States. And we began in our first week of our WECTEP program by going to a pit house and meeting a Sinaiaks knowledge keeper to just disrupt this knowledge, this idea that things are black and white, that things exist because people say they exist, and come to understand that there is power and privilege in our places, and that we can become knowledgeable and become part of work to not just decolonize, but to move forward in terms of restoration and re-inhabitation. And so this knowledge keeper said to us, she gifted us with this knowledge: when you come to our territory, go to the water and thank the water. And then once you've gone to the water and thanked the water, find an elder and learn about this place. And you will become ready to teach in this place by doing this work. We hope that you'll go to the water in your place. We hope that you will come and to be in your places more, and that you'll bring your students into your places in ways that build relationship, build curiosity to say, what could we do here? What could we restore here? What needs to happen here? But this isn't about doing something fast, everyone. It's just about moving forward, as John said at the beginning, in a good way. And it was just good to be together today. So thank you for being part of this community. Thanks again to our guest speakers. Thanks to SD61 for making this happen. We have one more session in the series. We'll be focusing on social emotional learning and self-regulated learning. And our guest will be Miriam Miller. Take good care. Enjoy the 1.5 minutes of extra time. And we'll see you after spring break.